It's May 21st here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with South Korea's 21st presidential election. Voting for overseas Korean nationals is now in full swing in 118 countries until Sunday. The three main contenders continue to vie for voters in the Greater Seoul area on Wednesday to woo centrist voters. U.S. President Donald Trump has unveiled a $175 billion Golden Dome defense project to shield his country from missile attacks, a plan that's also sparking concerns over a global arms race. Trade officials of South Korea and the U.S. began their second round of negotiations in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, detailing the two sides' expected July package that the newly launched South Korean administration will sign. Overseas voting is well underway for this snap presidential election, giving Korean nationals living abroad a chance to help shape their country's future. From the U.S. to Europe, many voters are turning out with a renewed sense of purpose. Our Moon Hae-ryun has our top story.
Sung Jin-ok, a Korean national living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, drove 4 hours to a polling station in Virginia. Arriving at daybreak to cast her vote, she said that she had never felt such an urgent need to vote in all her 16 years of living overseas.
There is something deeply moving about stamping my vote. I used to think my vote was too small to matter, so I often gave up. But this time, I hope it becomes a vote for real change.
With overseas voting for South Korea's presidential election now underway, Korean nationals across the United States are heading to polling stations in what they describe as a hopeful, even emotional act of civic duty. For many, this election feels more personal than ever.
I hope this election brings us closer together, a society united through democracy.
Meanwhile, others cast their ballots thinking of future generations.
I want our children to grow up in a society where responsible leaders step up.
The overseas voting period began Tuesday and runs to Sunday, taking place across 118 countries, according to the National Election Commission. A total of 258,000 overseas voters registered for this year's election, which is roughly a 14% increase in numbers compared to the previous election. Overseas voters in Asia account for the largest bloc at around 129,000 registered voters, followed by the United States and Europe. When heading out to the ballot booths, voters must bring photo ID. Those who have emigrated or acquired permanent residency must also present proof they remain solely Korean nationals, such as visa documents and permanent residency cards. Requirements for each country of residence are available on the respective embassy or consulate websites. In an effort to improve accessibility for Korean citizens living abroad, the NEC has installed new polling stations such as those in Lithuania, Estonia, and Luxembourg. Until now, Korean residents in Lithuania had to travel to Poland to vote, while those in Estonia made a 2.5-hour ferry trip to Finland. As the overseas voting window continues ahead of the domestic election period, many voters say they're not just casting a ballot, but expressing their hopes for a better, more unified country. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And on the first day of overseas voting on Tuesday, a Democratic Party candidate Lee Jun-seok reached out to Korean nationals living abroad. Now he's set to appeal to voters in Incheon today, where his constituency is located. Our Shin Ha-young has more.
Marking the first day of overseas voting, the Democratic Party's presidential candidate Lee Jun-seok encouraged overseas voters, saying a vote was stronger than a bullet. Ahead of a rally on Tuesday, he held a 1-hour virtual meeting with overseas Koreans. During a discussion, overseas voters from various countries shared the common difficulties they faced, especially inconvenience when voting.
Botswana has no Korean embassy or consulate general, so Koreans here have to go to South Africa to vote.
Lee Jun-seok emphasized that appropriate measures should be put in place to ease voting for those living abroad and introduce several ways to do so.
Overseas Koreans currently have to register and vote separately, but with a better system, both could be done at once. While some worry about mail-in voting security, Countries like the US use it, and Korea already allows similar voting for people with mobility issues or those in hospital. I wonder if it's fair to not allow overseas Koreans to vote by mail.
He also suggested setting up temporary polling stations with temporary staff, saying that given the high personal costs voters currently face, the government should provide this kind of support. On Tuesday, the DP candidate continued his campaign in Gyeonggi-do province, where he served as governor. He held rallies in the cities of Ujeongbu and Goyang, as well as Paju, which borders North Korea. During his visit to Ujeongbu, he highlighted peace and security and promised to support the development of the northern part of Gyeonggi-do, which has long been restricted by heavy regulations.
Hasn't this northern region made big sacrifices for the country's security over many years? Those sacrifices should be properly compensated, so people from now on don't feel it's unfair.
At his final stop of the day in Gimpo, he pledged to remove tolls on the Ilsan Bridge, which connects Gimpo and Goyang. 신하영, Arirang News.
And the campaign race heats up with less than 2 weeks left until the election. People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo now talks up ethics and reiterates his rival Lee Jae-myung's legal risks. Now this as he continues to make efforts to merge with the Reform Party. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Touring around the capital and the surrounding areas, People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo on Tuesday focused on ethics, emphasizing his DP rival Lee Jae-myung's legal risks. He tied in the message with the recent ramped-up security for Lee, saying the DP is using its supermajority on the floor to now make bulletproof legislation to protect Lee from legal risks.
I'll be an ethical president. I will never wear a bulletproof vest. I would get rid of the bulletproof glass and never try to pass bulletproof legislation.
Also during his rallies, he compared his 2 Gyeonggi-do province governor terms to the one his rival Lee served. He said it was he who created Gyeonggi-do's economic zone, such as Pyeongtaek Samsung Electronics plant, the largest chip plant in the world. Earlier in the day, he also shared his pledges on fostering culture and cultural activities as he visited a culture and arts organization. His major pledge was to make community culture centers across the nation accessible to anyone within 10 minutes to enhance cultural and art activities. Meanwhile, he also continued his efforts to convince another conservative candidate, Lee Jun-seok of the Reform Party, to merge. Facing the media, he sent a clear message.
He used to lead our party. As you've seen at the debate, there's absolutely no difference between us. Also, it was our party's problem that caused Lee Jun-seok to leave. So I think it's right to be together.
Lee Jun-seok continued to reject the offer, saying it doesn't make sense. But a movement to form an anti-Lee Jae-myung bloc started as the PPP's interim leader Kim Yong-tae met with the new Future Democratic Party's chairman for talks on future cooperation. This is a new party made up of former DP members who were not in Lee Jae-myung's faction. The leader of this party said the PPP's constitutional reform proposal of shortening the next president's term to 3 years, with the next one starting a new 4-year term with re-election, aligns with theirs. In the meantime, the PPP's Kim Yong-tae also proposed a debate for the First Lady prospects, but the DP and Reform Party candidates immediately criticized the idea to turn it down. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok plans to continue his campaign in suburban areas near Seoul on Wednesday. He plans to visit Suwon and Seongnam after meeting with university students at Gachon University and touring Seongnam Medical Center. This follows a visit to Gwangju City, where he met with students at Jeonnam National University to discuss youth issues, such as employment and pension reform, and address concerns about regional economic disparities. He once again expressed aversion towards the main conservative party's push for him to merge with their candidate. He is currently 3rd in national polls and is hoping to see his support levels rise after live TV debates with other candidates. South Korea and the U.S. have begun a new round of trade talks in Washington aimed at resolving disputes over tariffs proposed by the Trump administration. Starting Tuesday local time, Seoul's delegation led by the Trade Ministry and the U.S. Trade Representative will focus on 6 key issues, including balanced trade and non-tariff measures. Now, this is the second round of technical discussions and likely the last before Korea's new government takes office next month following the election. Korea is pushing for lower tariffs, while the U.S. is expected to call for more imports and regulatory changes. And different approaches to handling U.S. trade-related issues have also risen as crucial selling points for South Korea's present runners. Should South Korea take things slow or speed things up when it comes to U.S. tariff matters? Let's turn to Professor Kim Young-jin. Welcome back, Professor Kim.
Good morning.
So the Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung, he argues we should take enough time, and the People Power Party Kim Moon-soo believing a South Korea-U.S. summit is necessary right after the election. Now, first off, why might taking things slowly be a better idea here?
Well, before answering the question, we need to consider the goals Mr. Trump wants to achieve through the tariff policy, which is, done based on 3 basic laws. Trade Act, and then Trade Expansion Act, and then International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Mr. Trump says tariff will encourage U.S. consumers to buy more American-made goods, increase the amount of the tax raised, lead to the huge levels of investment. Mm-hmm. He also argues that America has been taken advantage of by cheaters and pillaged by foreigners. Yeah. His statement indicates that by using the tariff policy, he wants to resolve the issues, regarding the trade and fiscal deficit and to boost up the manufacturing industry in the U.S. He also wants to achieve other goals like, blocking illegal immigrant and illegal drugs from reaching the U.S. That's based on the IEEPA. However, due to the reasonable nature of his tariff policy, no country has completed the negotiation with the U.S. yet, although the U.S. picked up a group of prepared nations, 5 nations, right, including Japan and Korea. The negotiation with China is still going on. So I believe it is much better for Korean government to wait for the result of the negotiation between the U.S. and China, which is the key target of the U.S. in the trade negotiation. If we see the result of 2 nations, we'll clearly understand the purpose, target, and the method Mr. Trump wants to achieve through the tariff policy. Then we can proceed with the negotiations with the U.S., leveraging the U.S.-China and negotiation result.
So taking the much-needed time will be no harm to South Korea for now. Then how might a South Korea-U.S. summit right after the June election work better here?
Well, I don't think the newly elected Korean president has to meet the U.S. President Donald Trump right after the election because he won't be prepared for the trade negotiation. Even in the past, when the presidential election was done in a regular and normal process, the president-elect did not meet the U.S. president during the transition period. And furthermore, this presidential election is quite abnormal. Because it is caused by martial law declaration and the subsequent impeachment of the former President Yoon. It is very short. It won't give a period for a transition committee where the president-elect will set up his national agenda to pursue in his term. Even though the president's candidate may study for their, TV debate, the problems caused by Mr. Trump's tariff policy, it won't be enough for them to understand the very nature and impact of Korean economy, impact on the Korean economy and other issues. So moreover, Mr. Trump, look very unpredictable, right?
Yeah, really.
Which will give the president-elect of Korea a hard time to be prepared. However, it is manifesting that the Korean president has to meet with Mr. Trump directly talk, sooner or later after he, would be in.
Well, Professor Kim, let's talk about the talks actually going on over in D.C. Now, some experts expect the talks at this time will see a little progress and also be another round of Team Korea exploring the Trump administration's demands and wants. Do you also believe so?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I believe the upcoming talk won't see much progress. Just simply think about a situation where there is no decision maker for the country. There won't be no big deal between the counterpart, which may be required to move forward. The meetings of delegates from two countries will be very technical, as they say. I mean, they may set up some schedules for the next meeting, setting up the agenda and the processes that will follow in the next meeting. No big move, but they will get a lot of information each other.
Well, are you saying that finding out Washington's wants and needs will be Seoul's number one task this time?
Exactly. So it is critical, for a Korean delegation to understand and know what the real goals of the U.S. achieve this time. They have to figure out them to report to the next president of Korea, so that the next Korean government will be able to proceed with the negotiation. The one more thing they have to do at this time is to figure out how the negotiations with China, with Japan are going on, and what are the goals of the U.S. government want to achieve in the talks with China and Japan, and how to achieve the goals in the negotiation. This information will help the next Korean government in the upcoming trade negotiation.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much as always for joining us in the morning. You have a wonderful day.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he'll be protecting his country from missile attacks by building what he calls a Golden Dome. He says the $175 billion project should be capable of shielding the U.S. even if missiles are launched from space. Lee Jun-seok reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday his plan for a missile defense program dubbed Golden Dome. The multi-layered system would allow for U.S. weapons to be put into space for the first time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here in the Oval Office, one of the great places of the world, as we make a historic announcement about the Golden Dome missile defense shield. That's something we want, and Ronald Reagan wanted it many years ago, but they didn't have the technology. But it's something we're going to have. We're going to have it at the highest.
The Golden Dome will include ground and space-based capabilities that can detect and destroy missiles at all major stages of a potential attack. Trump said that he had promised the American people that he would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect the U.S. from the threat of foreign missile attacks. However, the ambitious plan also comes with a massive price tag.
I'm also pleased to report that the one big, beautiful bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed.
However, earlier this month, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that deploying and operating just the space-based interceptors of the defense system could cost up to $542 billion over the next 20 years. Still, citing the increasingly sophisticated threats from North Korea, Russia, and China, Trump said the system could be operational within 3 years, as he named General Michael Gutlein, Vice Chief of Operations for the U.S. Space Force, to oversee the Golden Dome project. 이승재, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense companies are making a strong push into Southeast Asia, showcasing their advanced capabilities at LIMA 2025, which kicked off over in Malaysia. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
KAI Defense looks to expand its realm to Southeast Asia. The Langkawi International Maritime and Aerospace Exhibition 2025, the largest exhibition of its type in Southeast Asia, kicked off on Tuesday. Among the Korean defense companies taking part is LIG Nex1. With the South China Sea disputes propelling Southeast Asian states to strengthen their naval capabilities, LIG Nex1 is showcasing its Haegung, ship-to-air guided missile defense system, hoping to attract buyers such as the Malaysia Navy. Many officials from other countries such as Vietnam and even Saudi Arabia also show their interest.
We are currently focusing our promotional efforts on a multi-layered air defense system. In the long term, we plan to expand into unmanned systems, space, cyber, and AI technologies.
Korea-U.S. Industries was visited by the Malaysian Prime Minister. KAI signed a deal with Malaysia in 2023 to export 18 FA-50 fighter jets, and with the very first one expected to be delivered next year, KAI is pushing for the second phase of the procurement project as Malaysia plans to acquire an additional 18 aircraft. The exhibition gave a peek into where KAI Defense stands in the global market. European missile firm MBDA had a mock-up of KAI's FA-50 and KF-21 with its own missiles loaded, promoting these to Malaysia. While sharing ideas of how MBDA could cooperate with KAI, the technical executive cited advanced technology and rapid delivery as some of the South Korean defense industry's strengths.
It's how rapidly you can bring those capabilities to market. KF-21 as an aircraft is a fine example of going from a concept phase all the way to something that's actually flying, integrating modern advanced missiles like Meteor on there, and actually doing test firings and maiden flights with it.
Based on the credibility it has earned, KAI Defense aims to explore more opportunities in the global defense market, starting in Malaysia. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Langkawi.
Now we take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tommy.
So Ji-hee, beginning in Europe, the UK has suspended free trade negotiations with Israel. What happened?
Yes, citing concerns over Israel's recent military actions in Gaza, the British government said it will suspend new FTA talks with Israel. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy announced on Tuesday that the UK is freezing its negotiations for a free trade agreement with Israel and implementing other punitive measures. Secretary Lammy condemned the Israeli government's military escalation in Gaza as monstrous. He also criticized the blockade of humanitarian aid to Gaza and summoned the Israeli ambassador to express the UK's concerns. The UK government also imposed new sanctions targeting settlers in the West Bank, including freezing assets and banning travel. The announcement comes after Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined French President Emmanuel Macron and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in urging Israel to cease its military operations and allow increased humanitarian aid into Gaza. The European Union has similarly voted to review its trade agreement with Israel. The Israeli government dismissed the UK's actions, saying its military operations are necessary for national security. In the United States, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the State Department has likely revoked thousands of visas, emphasizing that visas are a privilege, not a right. During a Senate hearing on Tuesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. will continue to revoke student visas, reaffirming the Trump administration's hardline stance on immigration enforcement. He indicated that the number of visa revocations so far is probably in the thousands and that the efforts are ongoing. The revocations primarily targeted individuals involved in on-campus pro-Palestinian protests. However, critics argue that this approach infringes on First Amendment rights to free speech. The World Health Organization adopted its first international pandemic agreement during the 78th World Health Assembly in Geneva on Tuesday to bolster global cooperation in preventing and responding to future pandemics. The agreement outlines measures to enhance surveillance and ensure equitable access to vaccines and treatments following the uncoordinated global response to COVID-19. 124 countries voted in favor, while 11 abstained. The accord was touted as a gift to the world by the WHO Director General. Notably, the United States did not participate in the treaty, having withdrawn from the WHO under the Trump administration, criticizing the body as moribund. Hangzhou, China will host the world's first live-streamed humanoid robot boxing match this Sunday. The contest, titled Iron Fist King, organized by Unitree Robotics, features two G1 humanoid robots, each 1.32 meters tall and weighing approximately 35 kilograms. These robots are equipped with advanced AI and motion control systems, enabling them to perform complex combat moves, such as spinning kicks and rapid punches. Their design also allows for quick recovery from falls. The boxing event comes after the world's first half marathon with humanoid robots in Beijing last month as part of a series of robot competitions sponsored by China Media Group.
It felt like we fast-forwarded 2 months on the calendar yesterday. Gyeongju, Daegu soared past 33 degrees, reaching heat advisory levels. Even Seoul saw its highest temperatures of this year so far, feeling like July. The heat continues in the capital area, but temperatures in Gyeongsang-do provinces will go down a few degrees compared to yesterday, but still very warm. Keep an eye out for sudden afternoon and evening showers across Korea. These showers can be intense and quick, coming along with gusty winds and lightning. So with the humidity, it feels like temperatures will be even higher. By the afternoon, Seoul will reach 27 degrees, Gwangju at 28 degrees. Mostly sunny skies are in store until the passing showers arrive. Then rain is a frequent visitor lately. We're expecting nationwide rain tomorrow, which should finally break this early heat.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.